Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker and I are just going to talk NHL today because we have taken a couple weeks off. Justin moved and I got COVID and I still have the remnants of a cold from it. So, Justin, hi, it's been a minute.
Yeah, hi. Sorry you're feeling, well, you were feeling a lot worse, and glad to see you getting better here.
My feelings got really hurt by COVID, actually.
Really, I don't doubt it.
Really offended me. It was, it sucked, but I've had worse, but I also would not want to have it again. I'll say that.
There you go.
If you're out there, you're worried about getting it. It is what it is. But yeah, if you hear me hack up a lung or something like that, it'll be okay. I'll get my lungs back eventually, but just have a little bit of a cold. But speaking of a little cold, before we dive into everything, I feel like the one thing that is just still going despite us not talking for a couple weeks, the Arizona Coyotes still have not won a game. They have 1 point through 10 games. So with the cold streak in mind, how many more games until Arizona has a win?
My goodness, yeah, I got to say that was a beautiful transition to start the show. I love it. So yeah, Arizona. I feel bad because they have been getting some excellent goaltending right now, despite just sucking it big time. And so, looking ahead at the schedule, right? So tonight, Friday the 5th, they play the Anaheim Ducks. They've got Seattle tomorrow, and then next week they've got Minnesota, Chicago, and Nashville.
You got to think they win one of these 5 games.
Right. They're playing, don't get me wrong, Minnesota's great. Nashville's playing pretty good hockey right now. But, you would think outside of Minnesota, those other 4 games are pretty winnable games as far as, teams are concerned. And I think, obviously Arizona's problem is they can't score goals to save their life. You look at their goal differential, it's the worst in the league. They've managed to score 13 goals through 10 games, barely above a goal a game. So, they're almost on pace for a minus 240 goal differential. That's insane.
It's unbelievable. They have 13 goals through 10 games. No one else doesn't have 20 goals. The next lowest right now is the New Jersey Devils. They have 21 goals, but they've played 2 fewer games.
Right.
This Arizona Coyotes team is, I thought the Buffalo Sabres were going to be really bad this year. I don't think anybody's going to touch the Arizona Coyotes. They are so horrendously bad.
Yeah, and they're in jeopardy of seriously touching that Washington Capitals least amount of wins record there. If I have to be honest, I would not be surprised if they get pretty close to, in the teens or, low 20s as far as win totals are concerned for this year. Yeesh. It would not shock me.
Yeesh. Yeah. I got to think this is, I actually kind of like the way that Anaheim has been able to play so far this year. I don't think that Anaheim's going to be the team that gets caught off guard by the Arizona Coyotes. But looking ahead through this schedule, I think probably the game to pencil is next Friday against the Chicago Blackhawks. If there's one team that Arizona might maybe sort of stand a chance against, it could be the Blackhawks, because the Blackhawks have allowed the same amount of goals as the Arizona Coyotes. They are the 2 worst defensive teams in the NHL thus far, and maybe that's the one place Arizona gets some goals. So that's my guess. I think they'll lose 3 more before they finally get their victory against Chicago.
Okay, I'm going to do you one even better. Chicago obviously has been playing some bad hockey this year, but I think with Patty Kane back, they're looking a little better. Obviously, it hasn't translated into a bunch of wins yet, but I do think you're going to see Arizona winless, and I'm going to pencil in the 18th against the Columbus Blue Jackets at home. I think Columbus has got their own set of problems right now, even though they're still competitive. I just think right now that game seems pretty winnable in my mind. I think they'll have a good shot against another team that doesn't score a ton of goals, and I think that's where you'll probably see them pull ahead and finally get their first win.
I mean, it's probably going to be a 0-0 shootout win, right? Like, I think that's where their 1 point came against Buffalo. That was a 2-1 shootout loss to Buffalo.
Right.
My guess is that that's going to be where Arizona kind of scoops up the win, is probably in a shootout somewhere. But it's sad state of affairs in Arizona. But since there's only 7 Coyotes fans out there, we should talk about some other things going around the league, like the Jack Eichel trade. I think that's a good place to stop up next, because finally Eichel is dealt. He's dealt to the Golden Knights. Tons to unpack here, as the Golden Knights just continually go out and acquire incredible talent that has been born and raised in another organization, only to go over to Vegas. So I know that everyone knows by now who's been in the trade, but the Sabres get Peyton Krebs, who's the 2019 first-round pick of the Golden Knights, Alex Tuch, a top 10 protected first-round pick, and then a second-round pick in 2023. So, the Golden Knights also get a third-round pick in the 2023 draft. So, let's just get your thoughts, get your take on what you thought about the Sabres and what they got back for Eichel.
Yeah, I got to say, first and foremost, I mean, right, you see everybody always talking about who won the trade, right? That's always the initial reaction. And to me, Jack Eichel won this trade because he finally gets to have the surgery he wants. He finally gets to get healthy, because you want to see guys like this back on the ice. You want good superstar players like this on the ice competing, whether or not, they're with Vegas, they're with Buffalo, there's drama surrounding it. It doesn't matter. Once they're on the ice, all that goes away. And to me, that's the real winner here. Now, as far as what Buffalo was able to acquire in this trade, don't get me wrong. I think, Krebs could turn out to be a poor man's Ryan O'Reilly, from what I understand. And, if he does, hey, that's great. I think he's more than capable of being a top 6 forward at some point in his career. And he's got that pedigree, that brand of hockey that I think will fit in well. Alex Tuch, of course, when he gets healthy again and plays, he'll be a top 6 winger for this team who, again, this team desperately needs an infusion of some top 6 wingers. I mean, to be quite honest, they've got a lot of good young players on this team. So Buffalo will be a competitive team here sooner rather than later, in my opinion. But, again, they get the first-round pick. So now this upcoming draft, they've got 3 first-rounders. They've got 3 second-rounders in next year's draft. So they've got a lot of picks stockpiled to where they can continue to develop and acquire talent. And I think, again, assuming that Krebs turns out to be the player we all think he can be, I think right now, all things considered, Jack Eichel wasn't going to be playing for Buffalo anymore, no matter what kind of deal you held out for. And I think for them, they were able to get something very comparable. Now, again, long-term is where you're going to see the results of this trade, whether or not they actually get something. And again, if Eichel comes back and he's not the Jack Eichel before the injury, then you can just point to Buffalo and say, okay, well, you just dodged a bullet in that $10 million, because they were very adamant about not holding any salary. So for them right now, this looks like, to me, like both teams did as best as they could. And I think, Vegas finally gets what I've been screaming about for the last, 3 years for this team, is they finally get that number 1 center that they've been lacking, because you cannot go into the playoffs this year with Chandler Stevenson as your number 1.
Right. And that was the big deal. And I think the Sabres kind of get to hit the reset button. Like, it was a good enough trade. I don't think it was. They didn't get Mark Stone, as I read from one. I can't remember who it was, but talking about how Vegas fleeced the Senators for Mark Stone. They didn't get fleeced, and that was really the important thing. Like, there was just nothing they could do. The only other option was let Eichel get his surgery, have him come back and play. And he did say in his press conference that he would have been willing to come back and play for the Sabres to increase his trade value. But the Sabres didn't want to take the chance on the surgery and then, oh crap, he's played 10 games and he only has 3 points, and then his value go down even more. So I think this is really, of course, there was always the chance he could have come back, he could have played, and he could have put up point per game, and maybe you got a little bit more. Maybe you got another first-round pick or another second-round pick, something. But would it be worth it? I don't know. I think that the best thing to do is to get this off the books, out of your mind. Like, the Sabres can focus on now making their team better. They know who they have. The guys they have there want to be there, and I think it's a good move because they can move forward. And that's what the Sabres need, to move forward, because they're not having a bad start to the season.
Right. No, they're not. And I got to say, good on Vegas, too, for not having to really give up any core star players, right? They didn't have to get rid of Shea Theodore. They didn't have to give up William Karlsson or Mark Stone, like you said. They didn't have to give up any of these core good players to get him. And so for them, that just only helps bolster their playoff chances, assuming that he comes back in 4 months and gets to play and, can help them push for a playoff spot, based on where they are now anyways. And not that I think they'll be down at the bottom for too long.
Yeah, the one thing that concerns me is, Vegas is a considerable amount over the cap. If Eichel came back today, let's say everyone's healthy, Eichel comes back today. I mean, they are right now they're like 11 million over the cap because of all the stuff they've got going on. Now, obviously, some of that is repairable. They can send guys down to the minors, yada yada. But there's quite a bit of money just kind of hanging out there, and they're going to need to probably shed $5 million. Where is that coming from? Like, are we ready to say, Riley Smith gets traded because they can't hang on to him anymore because of his $5 million? He's a UFA at the end of the year. There's a lot of question marks because that is the extra part of this deal. Like, somebody is going to have to not play. Now, right. The only other option that I see is they pull a Tampa. They keep someone on LTIR until the playoffs and then let them come back. But I don't think anybody's injuries are quite that severe where they're happy to let them miss the entire season.
No, and you know what? I mean, I have read, too, looking at their cap situation with Stone, Pacioretty, Eichel on long-term IR, right? They're going to get some relief as far as cap's concerned, but those guys are going to come back. They're not going to miss the whole year like, Kucherov right. did. And so, obviously the concern is shedding. And from what I read and, someone did the math and they said it's roughly going to be about $5 million or maybe just a little bit more to shed. So to me, the obvious candidate is Riley Smith, right? Whether or not Vegas is in a playoff spot or not, I think you have to basically look at him as the candidate because he's going to be a UFA. You're not going to be able to re-sign him next year because you've got Marchessault, you've got Dandanoff still under contract for next season. And, maybe they figure out a way to move one of those guys. But to me, Riley Smith can garner you, at least a second-round pick, I think. Maybe second-round pick and, maybe a lower pick too. But because he's still more than capable of playing top 6 minutes. And I think a lot of teams will definitely take that from Vegas. But again, knowing that Vegas is in this cap, against the cap ceiling and their backs are against the wall, teams might try to take advantage of that and just say, hey, we'll give you a 5th-round pick and that's all you're going to get from us.
But somebody would go, well, obviously we'll give you a 4th-round pick for Riley Smith. And then someone will go, well, no kidding, we got to give you a 3rd-round pick.
Sure.
I don't think that there's not much of that, much of the, well, let's all squeeze them. I don't think that there's, the whole league is in cahoots against any one team.
No, I don't think that happens either. But, again, Riley Smith to me seems like the obvious candidate. Another guy you could look to move is maybe a Braden McNabb. I think he could be an obvious candidate to maybe get put on waivers or, even moved at some point because they do have some pretty good, defensemen who can play, bottom pairing minutes and fill in, his spot. And that can help save a couple bucks there. And maybe you move another guy like Chandler Stevenson too. Obviously, I don't think they want to move him. I think they like Chandler Stevenson and would love to have a 3-headed monster of Karlsson, Stevenson, and Eichel. So, maybe that happens. And then, maybe they find a team again that, wants to take a chance on Evgeny Dadonov. And, he's got a 10-team no trade clause. But, hey, there could be another team that, is willing to take a flyer on him. And, maybe Vegas lets him go for next to nothing. just to get him off the books.
And that is ultimately what determines kind of the end game with this trade, is that, yes, they did give up, Krebs and Tuck, two guys that were on their roster. They gave up draft picks, but there's going to be more. And I kind of can't, it seems weird that, they weren't able to work anything with the Sabres to take one more player that, I mean, I guess at this point, they can't lose Dadonov or Riley Smith because they have no one else to play. So they couldn't include anyone else in that deal that would have taken off some cap hit. The only thing they could have done is to say, you got to eat some of Eichel's deal, but obviously they didn't want to do any of that. So here we are. They're going to have to kick the can down the road 3, 4, 5 months until Eichel gets back. And if you're Vegas, I think you're happy to do that for what you got.
Absolutely.
For what you got. Okay, now looking up and down the standings of this league, we're about 10 games in for every team. Yeah, some have played a little less, some have played a little more. But who in their current position do you, a couple teams, do you think you're looking at it and you're going, heck yes, this is exactly where I think they should be and where they, where I thought they'd be, or no, this is fake. This is not where they'll end up in this spot. Do you have anyone like that in these standings right now?
Yeah. First team I'm definitely going to poke at and poke the bear is going to be the bunch of jerks, Carolina. I mean, I don't know if I imagine them running off 9 straight, but I definitely had them winning this division. And for me, that's the first team I look at and say they're for real. I love what they're doing. They're getting much better goaltending than I thought they were going to get out of Anderson.
Yeah, he's playing incredible.
Yeah, and again, that's a testament to the system.
Where the frick was this, man?
Right.
All those starts. October was the most garbage month for the guy. I had to spend way too much time defending him in the month of October. And then he goes and does this.
Yeah, and then kind of on the opposite end, I look at a team that I say, okay, they probably shouldn't be there, and it'll definitely change in my opinion. But, I look to, I don't know if I want to call it obvious, but the Calgary Flames to me, 6-1-3, I just don't see them playing this good of hockey for this much longer. I mean, look, to me, it's odd seeing Sean Monahan on the fourth line, but I think that aside, really, I think everybody else is playing above and beyond where they probably should be playing. Elias Lindholm, I do like him, but is he going to be over a point per game for the rest of the year? No.
He's come close to it before.
Right, he has, but I just don't see this team finishing and playing as well as they have been for the rest of the season. Now, again, they're getting great goaltending, which always erases a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Bad habits and deficiencies. But it would not surprise me if at some point this season we see Sean Monahan moved. I mean, he's playing fourth line minutes, so maybe they've really priced themselves out as far as his value is concerned now. So maybe they have to wait till the offseason to move him. But Johnny Gaudreau looks really, really good. I don't know if he sticks around after this season. So, at some point, if they start to falter a little bit, are they just going to pull the plug on him at any point? I don't think so. But, I mean, again, this is just a team that I just don't see with the talent that's in front of them. I just don't see them sustaining it for the rest of the year, especially considering, again, they're lucky to be in a division where they've got, obviously Seattle at the bottom, but, Vancouver, LA not playing as well as maybe they should be right now. And I think those two teams are going to start to get hot again. Vegas, same way. I think once they get healthy, they're going to get hot. And so
Vegas isn't going to get healthy for months.
Sure. No, probably not. But again, they well structured and have enough depth, I think, to kind of stay with their head just above water. But yeah, I mean, I see other teams at the bottom of this division making a run for it. And then when you look at the rest of the Western Conference, there's other teams too that aren't just playing as well as they normally would. And so I think Calgary's been a product of, a weak division and a weak conference right now, in my opinion.
Well, and yes, I mean, it is a weak division, and I think that we knew that coming in. I don't think that's any surprise there with the Flames. Yeah, I mean, is Milan Lucic going to score 25 goals? Because that's what he's on pace for right now. He's got 3 through 10 games. Andrew Mangiapane, I mean, on pace for like almost 50 goals. So is Lindholm. Kachuk, 40 goals. I mean, yeah, they're off to a really nice start. Everyone's contributing, and it's the goal. I mean, the goaltending has been really good. Markstrom's played fantastic, and a 9.36 save percentage, that's not going to hold all year long. But this is why they brought him in. Like, this is why they paid him a good amount of money to leave Vancouver and come to Calgary, because they knew that he was good. And to the, hey, this is a weak division. I mean, the teams they've beat Washington, the Rangers, the Devils, the Penguins, the Flyers. Like, they went through the Metro and won 5 in a row. So it isn't necessarily all because they're in the Pacific and it's a weak division. They actually have not played much in the Pacific. They played Edmonton and they played Anaheim, and that, I believe, is it. Yep, Edmonton and Anaheim. And ironically, I think they definitely lost to Edmonton and they lost to Anaheim. So
let me clarify.
The weak division, they can't win in their own division, but they destroyed the Metro. I mean, that's where all their wins came from. 5 of their 6 wins have come against the Metropolitan Division.
Right. Well, I mean, New Jersey, Pittsburgh, Philly. I'm still not sold on Philly yet, but Pittsburgh and Jersey, I knew they were going to be bad. So those are
5,
easy
2, and 2.
wins. Right. I'm, again, still not sold on Philly, in my opinion, but I like where they're headed, and I think they're a pretty good team. But all things considered, when I say weak division, I mean for the rest of the season, right? They have to go through that division quite a bit. And to me, right now, I think with teams getting a little bit better, like Vegas is starting to turn it on a little bit more. LA, I think, will get it going, and same with Vancouver. And so you have to go through these teams. And Seattle's starting to find a little bit of mojo too right now. So, boy, you know what? This could turn out to be a real tough road for them to have to go down. I mean, outside of Edmonton, who's going to clearly run away with things at this point. But
sure looks like that. Yeah.
I mean, gosh, Wayne Gretzky the other day on TNT said that that's the best power play he's ever seen in his life. I mean, my God.
Dang.
Do not take a penalty on this team.
No, yeah. It's so funny though. Like, obviously, hey, Draisaitl, McDavid, 2 really good, like, unbelievable players playing on the same power play. I mean, there's other teams though with fantastic players in their power play, and they cannot figure it out. Like the Leafs can't seem to figure out their power play since going like 40% last season, or the very beginning of the season. They were lights out, and since then they can't figure out how to score on the power play. It's crazy, all the guys they got on that thing. Granted, they did score last night on the power play to win the game, but
I was going to say I enjoyed that game. To me, was a lot of fun. I just love the goaltending battle.
Wow, dude, Jack Campbell was summoning his inner Dominik Hasek in that one. He was a beaut. That was actually about as close to a playoff kind of game in the regular season as you probably will find in the first 10 games of the year. So much of a defensive grind. Like, there was just no space, talking Leafs and Tampa, just no space out there for anyone to do much of anything. And obviously it took until like 41 seconds when John Tavares in a crowd takes that snapper into the corner to tie the game. But man, what a gutsy game for both teams. I mean, it was back and forth. I mean, Tampa Bay is obviously struggling without, well, their entire third line and without Kucherov. That's it's proving to be more difficult than I think some people had pegged it to be without that line. I mean, they played all year last year without Kucherov. It's not like they can't play without him. But you can tell that they don't produce offense the way that they do when Kucherov is in the lineup.
Right. Yeah, they can't go and get those ideal matchups, right? You can't roll your third line out now against other teams' top lines because now you have to worry about that matchup. And so, Point's going to play a lot more tough minutes. Cirelli's going to play a lot more tough minutes maybe than you expected him to play this year. And so again, when you can't roll 3 or 4 lines now consistently, it becomes a little bit tough, right? And so obviously they're trying to learn, trying to adjust a little bit. And I think, over the course of the season, Tampa's going to figure out how to work their lineup that best fits them. And so that might not be, again, rolling 4 lines consistently. They might have to rely a lot more heavily on their top pairs or their top lines. But, hey, if it's me, maybe do a little shake up here, maybe mix the lines up a little bit.
Yeah.
But, you're not hitting the panic button yet. That's for sure.
No. I mean, they're 5-3-2. They're not in a bad place by any means. And they have Vasilevsky, so that's the ultimate equalizer. We talked Carolina. They're top of the Metropolitan Division and tops of that Atlantic Division. The other team that has yet to lose a regulation game, the Florida Panthers. They look about as real as you can be. And it doesn't matter who's coaching them either. They just seem to keep on rolling.
Yeah, I mean, they're what I like to refer to as a well-oiled machine, because it almost seems like they just went on autopilot the minute, Coach Q was, the minute he resigned and Andrew Burnett took over behind the bench. And, they have not missed a beat. And for me right now, too, the player I'm enjoying watching more than anybody else on this Panthers team is Aaron Ekblad. The guy's mustache is all over the place. And honestly, if I had to choose an early Norris favorite right now, I don't know what the analytics are on this guy, but he looks to me like the number one, he looks like the top defenseman in the game right now. And I mean, like, for me, Victor Hedman's the best defenseman in the game, but you watch against that Leafs game last night, a stupid turnover cost him the game pretty much. If he had cleared the zone properly, just little things like that. And Aaron Ekblad steps in, and he looks like every time he steps on the ice, he wants the puck. I mean, he's just going for it, and he plays so good at both ends of the ice in nearly 26 minutes a game right now. There's nobody better than him, in my opinion, on the back end in the NHL. And then not to mention the guys they have up front right now, everybody's rolling. I mean, Anthony Duclair leads the league in plus-minus. That's got to say something for a guy who nobody really wanted a few years ago. And Huberdeau hasn't really, even in my opinion either, really turned it on yet. I think he still has a couple more gears he can hit, and I think if he gets going the way he normally should, boy, between him, Barkov, Reinhart, Sam Bennett, Verhaeghe, they're going to be nasty.
Yeah, I will say that the one thing going for the Panthers right now, we'll talk shooting percentage. Barkov, 24.1. Huberdeau, 18.8. Ekblad, 12.1. Duclair, 33.3. Reinhart, 9.5. That's normal. Sam Bennett, 14.8. Carter Verhaeghe, 18.8. Brandon Montour, 10.5. Anton Lindell, 25. Louis Sterinen, 30. Yeah. Owen Tippett, 13.3. Like, Joe Thornton, 25%. Like, these guys are shooting the lights out. Everything's going in for them right now. So I will say they will come back to they will come back down a little bit here because they're not going to shoot 20+% all season long. Not all of them, maybe one of them. But they look great. I actually think that it was once everything came out, I was glad that Coach Q resigned. You don't want that crap hanging over your head all season long. It would have become a thing all throughout the year if he hadn't stepped back and resigned. I think that it was the right move because now this team can just move on from all that crap. Like, plus it's what they deserved. You can't ignore what they ignored and just keep on going about life without any consequences. That's just it sucks for this to come out now 8 years later, but I think that in the long run, like when we look back at whatever this Panthers team does, that it'll be like, well, yep, it was a good thing that he wasn't there to distract, because this ended up kind of rallying them around each other, and it was a good thing for the Panthers. So. That's it.
And then not to mention, I mean, when you talk about the Panthers, right, they're getting good goaltending from Bobrovsky too. And, unfortunate last night he goes down with an injury. I'm not sure, what the seriousness of it is and, if he's going to be out long term or miss any time at all. But, you're not so devastated because you know you got Spencer Knight back there who's still a quality goaltender, and so he's going to get an opportunity, I think, to shine if Bobrovsky's out for any length of time. And
poor guy starts 6-0, man, after having such a bad year.
Yeah,
a bad 2 years.
Right.
Yeah, they as far as I can tell, there's nothing out there about an injury other than him leaving the game. So I don't know what'll come of it.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, I'm sure he's fine, but with goaltenders, you never know. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, again, like you said, it doesn't. Spencer Knight can come in there. He's also played fantastic. So no biggie. Although 948 save percentage, fantastic. Not quite.
Not
like
quite.
Bobrovsky there. Who else? Who else are you looking at saying, nah, they don't belong there? They'll be somewhere else come season's end.
Yeah, just looking at the standings again, I think again, and I don't know if maybe this is just because I want to back up my early season predictions or not, but I really look at the Chicago Blackhawks, right? This is a team that we kind of mentioned a little bit earlier when you talk about goals against. It seemed like early on Marc-Andre Fleury, the reigning Vezina winner, couldn't stop a puck to save his life. But for whatever reason, they're starting to play a little bit better hockey. Again, they've still got a long ways to go, right? This team just still looks – I don't know if maybe they're having some internal issues with everything that's gone on with the Kyle Beach situation. Maybe, this team on the ice has just really not responded well, or maybe they're, a lot of teams when you have this, when you have things happening off the ice that don't pertain to the guys on the ice.
Yeah, it's a big distraction.
Right. It's, a giant distraction, right? So, you wonder if maybe it's a bigger distraction than maybe it would be for a team like this. But what I will say is, they've managed to, play some better hockey of late. They got their first win against Ottawa. They kept it close against Carolina. They kept it close against St. Louis last month. And so, and same with Toronto, right? So they've been playing better hockey. They're keeping it close against these good teams. And now you've got a chance, obviously they've got to play Winnipeg tonight. That one might not go their way either, but they've got Nashville, Pittsburgh, Arizona, Seattle coming up for their next, 4 games here. And those games are definitely going to be winnable games, in my opinion, for Chicago. So you could really see the script turn around quick for this team, especially because 3 of the next 5 games are at home. Again, you could really see them getting 3 or 4 wins out of the next 5 games here, and realistically putting themselves right back in, the thick of things when it comes to this Central Division. Because I think outside of St. Louis and Winnipeg, and maybe Minnesota as well, I think there's some teams that are just going to be easy to hop over, right? I think Colorado, again, there's another team, in my opinion, that at, sitting 6th, again, they're at 500, but I think this is a team, again, too, that, has really looked lost without Rantanen in there. So maybe they start to fix things here pretty soon. But to me, Chicago is more.
Sorry, did you say Rantanen or did you say Grubauer?
Well, I'll give you that. Antti Raanta, oh my goodness. He has not looked how I thought he would be. I figured he'd slide right in, maybe not play as good, but, he wouldn't really miss too much of a beat, right? And it just really,
Darcy Kemper.
Right, Darcy Kemper. I'm sorry, yeah. Darcy Kemper, right.
It's like, is Antti Raanta on the Colorado Avalanche and I missed him somehow?
Yeah, we already talked about Carolina, so let's move on.
There we go.
Yeah, so Darcy Kemper really just hasn't looked. I mean, a 904 save percentage right now is not obviously ideal. That's below average for what you expect a goaltender of his caliber and this type of team to be. And so, you look at, again, they're not really missing a ton of guys. Like, for instance, we talked about some other teams where they have a ton of injuries, like, the Vegas Golden Knights. But, I mean, they're still missing some big names, right? Devin Taves is out. Cale Makar is out. But to me, the straw that stirs the drink right now kind of seems like Mikko Rantanen, because they can't seem to get anything going on the power play. They're not scoring as many goals. It just seems like, without him, they seem a lot more lost than they were, without anybody else being out of the lineup.
Well, yeah, I mean, McKinnon with a goal through in his first 7 games. I mean, that's just, there you go. That's you don't have to look any further.
Right, and you look last year when McKinnon was out for a length of time. Rantanen didn't miss a beat. He kept going. He was over a point per game without him. And so, again, it makes me wonder, how important this guy really is to this team versus a guy like, say, a Nazem Kadri or, even somebody else who's injured like a Cale Makar. So, again, if they can fix the goaltending, if they can start to get better play up front, they'll get back into it. But
yeah, they'll be fine. I mean, it's that defensive side. It's not like they're not scoring goals. They're maybe a little under average what they want to be at, but I mean they're still at more than 3 goals a game. That's not a bad place to be. It's just they're allowing 3.5 a game, so that'll do it. Just got to maybe figure out that backup position for the goaltending as well.
And I will say Bowen Byram,
he's looked great,
very, very good for this team, especially when you wouldn't expect him to be able to step up and play these kind of minutes with, Devin Taves and Cale Makar being out right now. But he and Erik Johnson look like they're playing some good hockey right now.
Yeah. Rookie of the year, early candidate maybe, Bowen Byram. Outside of, you got him in there with Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider.
My goodness.
I think he's third in rookie scoring, Bowen Byram is.
He is, behind the 2 other guys you just mentioned, right? I mean, Lucas Raymond, 10 points already. Moritz Seider, 9 points. Bowen Byram, 8 points. And Seider, of course, named Rookie of the Month for October, and with good reason. I mean, he just looks like he is so comfortable back there in that Red Wings blue line. He was pegged in as a second-line guy, and now all of a sudden he's playing 25, 26 minutes a night now for this Red Wings team. Now, I will say if there is one, caveat on his that could hurt his chances here is, one, he's so calm and quiet back there, he doesn't get noticed. But then 2, he's on a mediocre that's Red Wing team that's probably going to finish towards the bottom of the division.
I don't think that matters for Rookie of the Year.
I hope not.
I really don't. I actually think that being on a good team probably hurts you because people are going to go, well, yeah, Bowen Byram had a really nice season, but look who he gets to play with. Whereas they're going to go, look at Lucas Raymond is by himself and look what he did. I mean, I think at this point, the way that Lucas Raymond and Moritz Seider have played, it's going to be those 2 guys for Rookie of the Year. I think it's going to be fun.
I hope so.
I mean, yeah, we can talk a little Red Wings here. Is obviously defensively, not much going for that team when Seider isn't on the ice, and that's really been their big downfall.
Yeah, and the other thing for the Red Wings too that they really seem to struggle with is really when their top line is not out there. Now, right now, Dylan Larkin is out for personal reasons. They won't specifically come out and say why or give any indication of when he'll be back. But, I think right now it's basically, when he's on the ice, when you have Tyler Bertuzzi on the ice and Raymond on that top line, they look very, very good and very, very dangerous. Now, when you get beyond that, when you look at a guy like Robbie Fabry, has not looked very comfortable, not looked very good when he's been on that first or second line. Pius Suter, I've expected a lot more out of this guy when they brought him in, especially all the hype coming out of, Chicago. But, outside of those top 3 guys at their forward position and Moritz Seider, there's not a ton going on for this Red Wings team. So hopefully these guys like Zadina, Fabry, like I mentioned before, these guys can really find their game, step up a little bit more and, really help elevate this team. Now, I will say, too, with Larkin's injury, we've got to see a little bit of Joe Veleno, and he's looked pretty good so far in the 3 games he's played, 2 points and a +2, and I've enjoyed what I've seen out of him so far, and so hopefully, maybe that trend continues and they can give him some more ice time and see what what they've got in him, because he's going to be another one of those guys, moving forward for the Wings in the next, 2 or 3 years. He's going to be a stalwart on that top 6, in my opinion, so we'll see.
Yeah, you hope goaltending wise that they can kind of figure this out a little bit. I'll give Nedeljkovic has been fine. Thomas Greiss kind of been peppered a couple times, and I think I was never expecting much from this team to begin with. I think where they sit right now probably would be a pretty big win if end of the year they were to finish 6th in this division, because of, I think we all expected Ottawa to take a pretty big step forward. We expected Montreal. I thought Montreal would be that like borderline playoff team. And and obviously neither of those teams have been very good, especially Montreal. But I mean, maybe Buffalo, it would be the one other team that you could say is definitely worse than Detroit for sure. But I think when all is said and done, if Detroit could finish sixth in this division, it is a step forward for where they have been. But I don't know if you want to finish sixth. I feel like you're still better off finishing a little further down the standings to get that higher draft pick. One more top 5 pick would really complete probably the sludge of a rebuild, that like down in the depths where you're just trying to get really good players. I mean, having a shot at Shane Wright should be the priority here for the Red Wings, because whoever gets Shane Wright, he's going to change the whole entire path of your franchise.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. If you have Shane Wright on one line and Dylan Larkin on another, I think you're doing all right.
Yeah, you're not in a bad place. Anything else that you want to hit on before we jump out of here?
Yeah, I just last but not least, just want to touch on one of your guys here. And so we've seen a couple contracts come out for defensemen lately, and I know this offseason we had a handful of them get signed to some big deals.
Yeah.
But lately we've had Adam Fox get signed for 9.5, and we had Morgan Riley get signed for 7.5. And I guess I want to get your initial thoughts on both those contracts.
Yeah, well, I have to say about Morgan Riley, I mean, do I love 8 years at 7.5? No, for a 27-year-old guy though. Not he'll be 35 when that deal's done, or 36. So the last 2, maybe 3 years of that deal might not look that great. But you had to do this. You had to keep him, and he wanted to stay, but you couldn't let him walk. He has been, I mean, the last 6 years making $5 million for Morgan Riley. I mean, he's been a steal at $5 million.
Right.
So you can kind of you can see the justification for paying out for those 8 years, and of course later on in the deal, the base salary goes down to 6 for the last 4 years, so it is a little bit easier to move towards the end there as well. So I don't hate it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it, and so I think that's probably means that it's fair, right? Like it's a good deal for the player long term, but it's a good deal for the team in the short term because you had to keep them. If you lose them, then everything else you've built is kind of for naught. You have to have Morgan Riley for this team to work, in my opinion.
Yeah, they need that number one defenseman, and he's been that for this team for a while. And I think when you look at the production and value you've gotten out of him, and you kind of look at some of the other contracts around the league, right? I look at what Dougie Hamilton got. I look at what Seth Jones got.
Yep.
And I compare it to Morgan Riley, and I say, cool. You know what? I would be, as a Leafs fan, I would be totally okay and on board with this. Now, again, I'm with you. The term itself worries me because when you get up to those 35 years of age numbers, that's when you start to really wonder, like, how good is this guy really going to be?
But also $7.5 million in 2030 when that deal ends. The cap's definitely going to be higher.
Right.
And so a $7.5 million deal, probably at that point, you're talking you're in the 90s for the cap, maybe closer to 100 million. So you're probably much less concerned. That's probably more like a $5.5-6 million guy. So it's probably pretty fair even towards the end of that deal.
Right. And you hope that you get the kind of production out of him that you did pre-COVID seasons, where he was putting up
70 plus points. Yeah. That would be nice.
Yeah, that would be just a steal because in my mind, even right now, looking at both guys, I'd still rather have Morgan Riley at 7.5 than Seth Jones at 9.5.
No, yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Now, Adam Fox, I mean, he's the third highest paid defenseman, behind Doughty and Carlson. And in my opinion, he's got the hardware, but I have a tough time getting on board with, it's the market today, right? You're paying for what he could be or what he will be, but I have a hard time,
you're paying for what he is. He's a Norris Trophy winner.
Well, right.
He was the best defenseman in the NHL last year, and that you're gonna pay out the teeth for a guy like that.
Right, and that's the tough part. But I mean, when you look at a guy who's literally only had prior to the season 125 regular season games and 3 playoff games, and hasn't produced at all, so you don't really know what kind of guy you're getting in the playoffs either, which always worries me. But I mean, so far he looks like the real deal. I love his game. He looks like he's still gonna, guys get those big contracts, right, and then they usually fall off the rails. And right now, I mean, he's 11 points through 10 games, and he's really anchoring that New York blue line. So you hope he continues this production because, again, they've got $8 million tied up in Trouba. They've got a lot of money tied up in Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider, so they don't have wiggle room to go out and get other big-name talent in there to really help bolster that D-line if for some reason you see Adam Fox start to falter a little bit.
Yeah, I don't expect that he'll falter.
No,
but I mean, you had to pay him. He's your best defenseman, and those guys are going to get paid. And you look at what Artemi Panarin is bringing in. You knew it was going to come in a little bit less than him, and you look at what like Cale Makar is getting. It's right on par with those guys. So,
yep.
I would think that at the end of this deal, in 7 years, he'll be 30 years old. You'll probably be, that takes you right to where you're probably signed in one more good contract for 3 or 4 years, and then you're done. So this is his big payday. He's using quite a few UFA years, I believe, in this deal. I think it's 3 of them. 3 of these are UFA years. So that also, tips the scale towards why he's getting a little bit more too, because some of these are UFA years.
Yeah. Now let me ask you: do you think if he had held on and say maybe signed a 1-year contract and went out, or maybe 2-year contract and went out and continued with this, outrageous play, this production, puts up 60, 70 points this season, wins another trophy, or at least finishes in the top 3 or something like that? Do you think he could have cashed in for more than $11 million and got Erik Karlsson money at this point?
I'm sure he could have, but what happens if he has like a little bit of a down year, and then he only gets $7 million?
Sure.
That's $9.5 million. I'm taking that all day. Like I think that you're betting on yourself, and you're giving yourself the wiggle room to go, maybe every year I'm not a Norris Trophy winner, but I am a pretty damn good defenseman. So I'm going to take this money and I'm going to run with it and play the hell out of this contract.
Right.
So I think I like sometimes when, I think because the NBA has kind of made us look at contracts a little bit different, to go, whoa, that guy, all these guys signing 1-year deals every year because they know how freaking good they are, and they get league max, and they, then I get another league max the next year anyway, so who cares? But hockey's just far more volatile than other sports too. So I think it's like football too. Football, you're going to take your money because you never know what can happen out there. So,
well, with football, they can cut you at any time for no reason.
Well, that is true. Well, but there's guaranteed money, right?
Sure. Yeah. And that's why guys will take the guaranteed money, because they can be cut.
Right. But I like hockey, like football, it's a much more volatile. Like, I think it's probably less likely in basketball to suffer a career-ending injury than it is in hockey, or not that you can't tear your ACL playing basketball, but because of the contact sport nature, there's just more weird stuff that can happen. But with that said, we could talk hockey all day, but I'm going to go and probably have a couple coughing fits here tonight, and and hopefully heal up completely from this crap, and we'll keep on chugging through the season. It's 10 games in. I can't believe it. It's crazy.
Loving it.
All right. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. We'll look forward to talking to you soon.